Thanks. I haven't prepared my talk extensively. I mean, I know what I want to discuss with you. So instead of having a sort of monologue or sort of one-minute delivery, I probably will invite you to ask me what you want to understand, what you want to learn. Some of my uh, some of my thoughts and inputs might be too radical for those who actually try to make a lot of sense out of the old historical settlements. So we'll debate, we'll discuss, and I'll try to give my inputs. If you have any specific query, let me know. I can start my conversation with that, or you just simply want to warm up to visuals, I can do that as well. My work area is primarily on building energy efficiency, which is a small component of the larger sustainability discourse. And more on the energy efficiency, my further sort of narrowed down work is on thermal comfort and building physics, and we also deal with some of the technological part of the building physics. So that's what I'm trained as an architect, but architects now don't consider me as an architect. Physicists and mechanical people have not accepted me as a person who can talk to them. So I'm right on the edge, and I'm enjoying that edge as well. So if you have any specific query about the kind of exercise that you're doing in the old city of Ahmedabad, I would like to start with that. I know you have site and you have some program, and do you have any specific question or general question? Okay, let me ask you. You don't have a question. How many of you feel that the old settlement has something to offer to us, so that we can build similar things in newer, or we can follow some of this thing in newer development? Okay. Almost all of you. What specific thing which you feel you should be putting it in your development?
I think the air temperature inside of the houses is really nice if you compare with the outside temperature. And they don't have air conditioner, it's just because the sun and the way you make the building.
Anything? Anybody else?
All the social interaction that it allows.
Right. Okay. Anybody else?
A different thermal comfort for each activity in the house.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting some fodder. Anybody else? Okay, so the social dimension is definitely not my subject, so I will not deal with that. But at least these two queries. So when you say temperature, have you been to these places?
Yeah.
When?
Yes.
When? 7 days ago.
Some days ago. And how long you did?
Inside the house, I guess 10 minutes.
And did you ask the occupants how do they feel?
I cannot because they weren't able to speak English, and I cannot.
So if I say that these whole houses they don't give you comfort across the year.
Sorry?
They don't give you a comfort across the year. They are not suitable for today's context. Will you accept it?
Maybe we don't have enough information to us.
Okay, so to answer your air temperature and to understand a little bit of thermal comfort, let's try to understand what happens in these houses, right? And to understand, let's also try to understand what is sort of climate in which these houses have been built. There are two things which primarily governs our thermal comfort. One is temperature, and second is air velocity. third, which is not very studied subject, is relative humidity. Okay. Now, if you don't understand any of these terms, just let me know. Third one is second one, air velocity. Air velocity. SP. And what happened? What is happening in the old houses? Okay, so air temperature gets defined, or rather impacted primarily by a solar radiation. The amount of sun which hits any surface, the temperature of that surface goes up. That's because of the long wave and short wave radiation. So, if you look at the solar spectrum, we have a visible light which helps us to see the colors, and we have a ultraviolet which you hardly see, but they are coming from the tube light, and you have infrared. The infrared component carries a lot of heat. We don't see that, but infrared component has a lot of heat. So when any surface comes in a contact with the solar radiation, it starts receiving the visible range, infrared range, and it also emits certain kind of frequency back. It absorbs and it emits. What it absorbs is the frequency other than the color. Now, in pole houses, because they are compact, they are mutually shaded, they do not get exposed to a solar radiation. However, once they start, so this is one thing. Outdoor air temperature also impacts your indoor air temperature, because they are densely ventilated buildings. They don't use air conditioner. They open your windows. They open your door. They also have a courtyard to bring in the light and stuff in. So outdoor air does flow inside. Now, if outdoor air is warm, you definitely will not have that air will not cool down when it enters the building. Because your windows do not have any refrigeration system, right? The trellis jali, only what it does, it only reduces wind speed, or sometimes increases the wind speed. But other than that, doors and windows, they simply take outdoor air and bring inside. So temperature of the outdoor air comes in. So when somebody says that the houses are comfortable, one needs to question that what is the difference between outdoor and indoor? It's only you are in shade, you're not getting a direct solar radiation, and you are getting solar radiation. Otherwise, the air temperature with both sides are almost same. Are you getting my point?
Yes.
But it doesn't feel like that.
It doesn't feel like that. What is the reason? So then it comes to thermal comfort. So my air temperature, what is outside and inside is same, but I'm feeling a little cooler, or at least for those 10 minutes when I'm inside. That's primarily because my surfaces are cooler, right? So you have one more parameter. It's called the surface temperature. So air temperature and surface temperature. And because these rooms are small enough, you always expose yourself to the surface temperature. If it's a big room, then you will not get affected by surface temperature, because these are small rooms, then you get affected by the surface temperature. And the surface temperature would be always lower than air temperature. The reason for that is that they do not get exposed to solar radiation ever, right? They're almost shaded. Now, this is where things starts becoming pretty doesn't favor the occupancy cross taken. do you have an understanding about the time lag and the damping effect of the temperature? Or shall I explain you? Okay, let me change my track. Okay. So let's say you get on x-axis. Let's say on the x-axis you have time of the day, and on y-axis you have a temperature. And if you see this black, which is outdoor air temperature. So let's say in the morning, 4 o'clock, your temperature is low. In the noon time, it goes up. And again, at midnight, it drops down. Next day, it also goes up and goes down. This is what happens outdoors. But the indoor shifts. Indoor temperature, the dotted one, which is inside of the wall. Okay. You can see a body shift here. This body shift is primarily due to a thickness of a wall. And the mass receives the heat, but it delays the emittance of the heat inside at about 4 or 5 hours. Not only that, but it also dampens. You can see the peak here and peak here. It also reduces the peak by 10% or 15%. And this happens across the year. And this is what we call it a damping effect and a time lag. So what happens outside, it takes a while to happen inside. And by the time outside starts becoming cooler, so again, when you start operating your doors and windows, it starts giving you a cooler air. So let me narrate this with some live example. In the night, my temperature is low, my doors and windows are open, I'm letting outdoor air to get in. In the noon time, outdoor temperature goes up and I know that it is bringing a warm air. I'll close my windows, I'll close my doors. And the moment I close it, it starts giving me certain kind of resistance towards outdoor air. And then the damping effect starts. Now, this happens across the year. However, amount of heat which needs to go back, you also can see here, right? This has gone down, but this has not gone down that much. That means indoor air temperature always remain in certain bands and doesn't hit the peaks. This is very important to understand. The value. Temperature will not drop closer to the outdoor air, because once these gets heated up, they also will keep radiating something on it. Right? Now this happens across the year, and if you see a little longer term, that is what happens. Your outdoor goes up like that, indoor remains low like that, and then this remains in a sort of peak. This goes up to, let's say this is again surface temperature, this is up to 50, 55 versus your indoor surface temperature will remain at around 38 only. So you get a shallower, or you get a flatter curve over a period of 1 year, right? And this is what happens. Your green, which is sort of outdoor, which goes up and down all the time, and your purple remains in a certain band. Okay? This, we are all talking about a surface temperature here. We're not talking about air temperature now. Fair? Okay. So primarily our thermal comfort, it's not about air temperature, but the thermal comfort gets affected by some of these parameters. Air temperature, air speed, we call it mean radiant temperature, and this is actually the one which affects us. Mean radiant temperature is, it's a calculated number. You can't really measure mean radiant temperature, but what is it? It is an average between a surface and an air, surface temperature and an air temperature. That we call it mean radiant temperature, right? All of you must have experienced this, that in an air conditioned car, or in air conditioned bus, you're next to the window, your air temperature could be 24 or 25, but you still feel a little uncomfortable because a direct radiation is hitting you, and the surface temperature of the glass is much higher than the air temperature inside. That means the mean radiant temperature is affecting you. And this is what happens in a pole houses. That somebody is feeling comfortable is not because of the less air temperature, but because of the lower mean radiant temperature. And lower mean radiant temperature happens because your surfaces are lower, your air temperature is higher, and average of that is which affects you, is much lower. Right? So if you make, now learning from the pole houses, if you make a compact plan, if you put a courtyard, if your walls are thick, made out of stone and lime, and I'll come about those material characteristics in a while. But if you have a large floor space, then you are not going to remain comfortable because you will be away from a surface which is cooler, and you will be relying only on air temperature to give you comfort, which is not going to give you comfort, because natural ventilation, whatever happens outside, happens inside. And that's where my sort of question is that the kind of spaces which we need today, either we opt or we adopt certain kind of activities which only happens in a small rooms. I'm talking about commercial buildings, not really the residences. Then I need to have surfaces around me which are cooler. Now that could be either walls or it could be partitions, and that's where some of the steps of work is working, where you have a large floor space, you have partitions, but partitions itself are cooler. If you do that, then definitely your mean radiant temperature will remain in certain band, and you will feel comfortable even in a naturally ventilated spaces. Right? So therefore, it is not direct. You can't replicate this if you don't have a compact plan and compact spaces also. You need to have surfaces around. It could be walls, it could be partition as well. Okay, so this could be one of the learning. I don't know what activity they are going to perform. I mean, in terms of the design.
The one is an overall site plan level, so it continues to be a neighborhood, but just reorganizing open space or whatever. And the insert would vary by each project. It could be a collective space for, let's say, women activity or a school or a health center. Like that.
Okay, so
Must be daytime.
yeah, so the input which I would like to probably strongly suggest is that do adopt a neighborhood level compact planning, but a modern day requirement of the large space also needs to be catered. You can do that, but provide enough partitions. And these partitions needs to be such, they cannot be of wood, they cannot be of glass. These partitions need to be of such which can hold the tools whenever outdoor is comfortable. Now let me come to material characteristics. We feel again these walls remain at the lower temperature or surface temperature of the walls are at the lower level, primarily because they have moisture inside. The moisture remains inside primarily because of the lime. Lime have a tendency to retain moisture, either lime plaster or limestone. Right? Now, there are two sides of this. One is the comfort side and second is the health side. So these, because of the lime, the moisture diffusion which needs to happen happens in a manner that it retains it retains the moisture, and because of the moisture the temperature of the surface remains low, and that helps you to get your MRT lower. But the constant exposure or rather constant presence of moisture in a plaster or in a stone in a less ventilated space. Again, if you see, the pole houses do not have very large windows. That means air change does not take place, or does not take place enough. So, for example, this room, if you open the windows, if you open this part, it will have at least 2 air changes per hour. Amount of air which you have inside, kind of temperature we have outside, temperature driven wind flow or air velocity will change the amount of air twice in 1 hour. Versus in a pole houses, what you get is 0.5. So every 4 hours, you get 1 air change. Right? Now this 4 hours, that means if you actually see morning 8 to 12, afternoon definitely because of the outdoor air temperature you're going to close your windows, and evening 4 to 8. So in a manner, the air of the interior spaces does not get changed more than twice or thrice in 1 day, which needs to be at least 12 or 15 times in a day. Now, because the air does not get refreshed or changed over a period of time, and in the presence of the high moisture content, mold growth takes place. And this mold growth has a direct impact on indoor air quality. Indoor air quality and then health, primarily asthma and arthritis and other things. So constant exposure to the humidity brings in certain kind of indoor air quality issues and health problems, which needs to be tackled. So second learning one can have from, yes, I can have a cooler surfaces, but these cooler surfaces should not allow any kind of condensation to happen or any kind of moisture needs to be retained. It has to be dry, cool air, so that my indoor air quality, or you still can have a cooler air and a moisture, but then you need to have a lot of air change. A lot of air change needs to happen, right? So I probably would like to stop at this point and want to seek some more questions so that I can start replying. I can still elaborate this more and more.
I Sorry, I
Yeah.
missed the part where you were saying that the line had a lot of moisture inside, but the stone, what did
It's
you
a limestone.
had it,
They also retain moisture quite a bit.
but you were comparing it with another material that I didn't.
So brick, the clay brick, limestone, all of them have a tendency to retain moisture.
It is important with what you were saying, but I also get this sensation when we get into the courtyard and everything, it's a more humid space that makes it a little bit cooler. So joining the shade and a little bit higher humidity, and it makes me feel like it's kind of. So that's why I don't, in terms of also, I mean, in terms of health and everything, I get what you're point, but I don't see that much like this not comfort kind of.
Because
Maybe it's
we,
because
we go as a tourist,
Yeah.
and we don't perform any activity there. If you start performing, even if you start washing the clothes or even doing some kind of little bit of activity which has a higher metabolic rate than what you are do right now, it's like 0.6 met, or I would be 0.8 or 0.9 met. The moment you start doing a little bit of activity which is a high metabolic rate in the presence of humidity, you start sweating. Because your body needs to manage its water content. That means it's not. In fact, it's good to sweat, but at least person will not be comfortable. And it's not good to sweat across, over a period of 3-4 hours. So thermal comfort also has. That's where the relative humidity plays for a role. So in a winter, it would be because outdoor air does not have enough, lot of high humidity. You're very comfortable. But if you are approaching the monsoon, what requires is air change. Even with a higher humidity, if your wind is flowing, even at let's say 0.5 meter per second kind of numbers, you'll be comfortable. So, and that is not happening because of this compact plan. It's not happening despite of the coat, yeah. So if at all, if you ask me today that what will you do to retrofit this entire settlement, I'll start providing the air changes, either by mechanical means or by the temperature driven or buoyancy driven, anything. I'll start providing it, and then these spaces will work. And that's why you might have seen that the ventilator design at the right at the top of the window, and the window has 3 tiers, and you have a chance to operate various the opening proportion at various point in time. Does help, but in today's time, you still require a little bit of mechanical venting. It could be self-acted. It's not that you have to use electricity to rotate a fan. You can still rely on temperature difference to rotate the fan. Kind of self-extractors which you might have seen in some of the places, even in your country might have that. So if the moment you start providing a good air change, it will be healthy. A little bit more velocity, it will be comfortable. Yeah.
And what about the roofs? Because they are made by metal.
Yeah, tin
It's
sheets.
a quality.
Yeah, metal tin sheets.
So the height on the roofs are big size. It's gonna be a problem.
Right. So they need to be insulated, or they need to have some kind of material which can give you a thermal lag. Right. So if you let's see what happens. So what we did is one of my students was we were interested in looking at some numbers. we have heard from him a number of times that they're comfortable. We have heard from many other people. We said, let's start to look at it by providing some kind of numbers to. So we picked up one of the pole and few houses, and we started measuring these parameters. So the relative humidity, air temperature, air velocity. You can't measure mean radiant temperature. It needs to be calculated. But to calculate that mean radiant temperature, you need a globe temperature. Now, what is a globe temperature? It's, let's say, this particular particle of the air has a certain temperature, but it gets affected by some radiation or radiant surfaces around it. So if I bring my sensor here, my globe temperature will get affected by the surface temperature here. If I bring it here, it will be less. So what happens is that when we put a air sensor, and then we cover that with a black body. So this point will get affected by a radiant temperature or whatever is happening outside and gets concentrated here. That's what the globe temperature. And from the globe temperature, we calculate mean radiant temperature and the surface temperature. So we measured this. At the same time, we were also measuring what is happening outside. So outside relative humidity, outside dry bulb, outdoor air, and we were measuring velocity. And also there are two kind of weather data. One was April 12 and second is July 12. There's only these two parameters I have at that time. And there are three houses in this Moti Hamamni hole we picked up because the occupants were nice enough for us to allow, because some of these becomes very interventionist exercises. It's not that we just put a logger and we keep on logging. There are two ways we do the work. One is that we place sensors inside the rooms and they keep on logging the data. But some of these, the air velocity or globe temperature, if you start logging them, there might be some errors as well. So the air temperature, air velocity in globe needs to be measured instantaneously in certain ways, and that we did I think 4 times in a day. Yeah, so these are the sort of instruments which we, this is a logger which keeps on logging, but these are the ones which helps us to look at the instantaneous numbers. Then later on, we also did a study. Let's say if this is a house and if I have a courtyard here, what if I just close the courtyard and what happens inside the house? So then it's a modeling exercise, that what is the impact of the courtyard on courtyard itself and spaces next to the courtyard. There's both things needs to be looked at, because courtyards are not the one which houses a lot of activity, but the adjacent spaces do get. And then detailed computational fluid dynamics, and we picked up some models which are relevant for such kind of study, and these are sort of mesh. Actually, you can see that's a schematic of one of the whole house, and wherever you have walls, your mesh needs to be more closer to each other, more granular, so that you can actually pick up the surface temperature, what happens inside the wall and what happens outside the wall. So that's sort of, this is where our expertise gets into the. And we did also on-site monitoring of various spaces. These are the 3 houses we picked up. This is one house with 7 people inside. Some of the floor areas. That's the second house, and the same house, and these are the sort of positions of our loggers. As you can see, the loggers are generally on the surfaces. Although loggers do have radiant shields, they don't get affected by a surface temperature when it's measuring air temperature. It does have certain kind of radiant shield. But we also were in doing on-site instantaneous measurements, where a person will stand here, person will stand here, person will stand here, which is more at the activity area. right in the center of the room or wherever. Yeah. And when I say calculated temperature, that means what we calculated through our energy simulation model in the software. The first one which you saw, this one. So this is our computer model. And when I say calculated, that means it's calculated through this mesh. And then we also calibrated it. And when you say recorded, that means whatever is coming from outside, from the site. And as you can see here, the dampening effect, which I was talking about in the morning, in the first hour, where your outdoor temperature goes up and down, but your indoor recorded temperature in two various spaces. So basically, green is a courtyard. Yellow is a first floor, one room. Red is a ground floor, one room, and green is a ground floor, another room. And then some of those spots. See, to do this, we need the instantaneous. I mean, the calibration of our energy model requires a lot of data, and for that, we only looked at the daytime operations, where we will look at the instantaneous, and we started comparing that. As you can see here, that almost all spaces remain at 28 to 32 degrees across the April and sort of 1 month of April. I'm just showing you 1 month data, which is sort of representative season, although we also have data for May. But in May, we did not get a good correlation between our calculated temperature and recorded temperature. So this is what happens in terms of on-site measurements, and it also gives us a confidence about our energy model, because energy model is the one who is going to help us understanding the impact of the courtyard. That what if you close the courtyard, what will happen? And that therefore this model needs to be calibrated against what is coming from outside. Okay, now this is about the relative humidity. What one thing which I forgot to mention here is, if I have a material which can take advantage of this dip, right now because of the lime or brick, I am not I can't lose the heat, whatever I get during the day, in the night very quickly, which tin sheet does. But again, tin sheet gets warmed up very quickly and doesn't get, and also lose the heat very quickly. But I need a material which does not allow the heat to affect me immediately, and once I store it, I should keep giving that cools back to the air temperature and if I do this, then I'll be able to take advantage of this. And probably how much time do we have next 2-3 days? I can show that material. We are developing a sort of material which actually helps you to take advantage of this part. So what happens is that if in the daytime you open the door, in the nighttime you open your windows and doors, you let cool air to get in. This material will store the cools instead of storing the heat. It will store the cools. You shut your windows during the daytime, and this cools will help you to operate your indoors during the daytime. In the night, again, you open it up. They will get recharged, and next day again they will be ready for you to give you. And that's the kind of materials which we need to operate our buildings more and more in a naturally ventilated mode, even with the computers around, because they also emit a lot of heat. And in the commercial spaces, probably the radiant fraction of these are far more than what is coming from outside. But that's a sort of another anecdotal evidence that if you have 30 meter by 30 meter space in Ahmedabad, a commercial office, which will house X amount of people, the amount of heat it generates from within would be more than what comes from outside. because of the body, because of the computers, because of the other peripherals. Sometimes people use this against the vastly ventilated building argument, because you make 50 meter by 50 meter, 60 meter by 60 meter and start operating in air condition, because you know that outdoor is not going to help you here. So anyway, so what one needs to do is one needs to take advantage of this dip, which we are not doing right now. And therefore, your average temperature remains at 30-35 degrees. If you start taking advantage of this, actually this needs to drop down to 28 kind of numbers, or 25 to be on a more ambitious side. That's about relative humidity, and again you can see that sometimes it picks up. Surface temperature more or less remains same in various houses, although your surface temperature outdoors goes up and down. And if I see, not this one, but check, but as again you can see in the, I should get surface temperature of the rooftops for you to understand how that the tin sheets goes to 75, 80 degrees centigrade, and that means the radiant part of that coming on the first floor, the top floor, will bring your temperature up to 40, 42, because your surface is 65, 70. So that's the sort of on-site measurements about operating temperature. This is a simulation with a courtyard, and this is a simulation without. So if you just imagine that building doesn't have a courtyard and you just have one other room, what is the difference which you start getting? And you can see that you start getting a more variation in the spaces. You can't spot a red dot here, which is a ground floor room, but you can spot a red dot here. That means the dots becomes a little more away from each other, and that means there is a variation in the temperature from one space to other space. So the moment you have a courtyard, it doesn't allow you, and this is counterintuitive. Doesn't allow you to have a variation in the spaces, but the moment you are without the courtyard, you have more variation. And that means, other way around, if you start looking at, this is like the 35 plus minus 1 or 2 degree, and you have 35 plus minus 4 degrees. You're getting my point? Without the courtyard, so with the courtyard, you are 35 plus minus 1. Without the courtyard, you are 35 plus minus 4. Although 35 becomes sort of normal, but then you can see the spread here. That's the impact of the courtyard.
Yes, but the times you have the lower temperature are like 7 to 10.
That's morning part.
Yeah. And there also you have it, but only in the courtyard.
That's right. Sorry? Yes. No, this is a midnight to midnight. So this is a morning part where your outdoor is low, but still your indoors is higher. And here you are sort of closer to the sort of outdoors, which is 35, 40. This is about relative humidity. Again, as you can see that without the courtyard, you get a little bit more during the morning hours, but it's the same here. Yeah, and this is sort of covering the. So what it says that ground floor rooms adjacent to the courtyard remains in the range of 31 to 34. And so the minimum impact of outdoor air temperature, which is first floor rooms and early heat gains to the sloping roof, which is primarily the tin sheet, and that create certain kind of convection in the courtyard. Comparing courtyard house with courtyard house with a house without courtyard, so it's 2 to 4 degrees centigrade temperature. Ground floor has around 4 degree rise into temperature in evening hours, and first floor room is less impact on the courtyard. And that's again primarily because of your tin sheet or because your higher exposure. Your roof takes over the courtyard. So if anybody is making a ground structure with a courtyard, I would say you are not actually taking advantage of the courtyard because your roof is overpowering the courtyard. So if you want to have a courtyard, make sure that you have ground plus 2, 3 kind of structure. Then that floor space will give advantage to ground first, second kind of numbers. That's a comparative between 3, and again you can see the tin sheets are getting a little more warmer during the daytime. That's a position of loggers. Again, all 3 together. That's the house on the first floor room. So this house was not having a tin sheet; it was having a wooden and a manual tile or tiling. This one is a tin sheet. This was a tin sheet. You can see the first floor really floats with the outdoors. That's operating temperature. That's relative humidity. Yeah. Yeah, this is one thing which I thought that I should share with you. Second one is about the thermal comfort, and somebody raised that question about thermal comfort. And what is a sort of shift between what happens in our Western countries, where you have more or less either a same temperature band or you operate your buildings in an air-conditioned environment. And let me show you one graph. Okay, typically our buildings to get evaluated against, we call it a thermal comfort, which we call it a predictive mean vote, and PPD, that is how many people would be dissatisfied if you have certain kind of temperature. So the way we understand or we try to look at this thing is that the neutral temperature means that you are in equilibrium with your surroundings and you are very comfortable. But there are uncomfortable. There are 2 sides of uncomfortable situation. One is the warmer side and one is cooler side. Warmer side, that means you are feeling warmer and therefore you are uncomfortable. Cooler side is when you are cooler and therefore you are uncomfortable. So this is a model which gets followed across the. But and that's we call it a PMV model. But if we actually ask people about their preferences about neutrality, they will say that I'm either uncomfortable or uncomfortable towards cooler side or comfortable. If you follow that model, then hardly people will, at least in a nationally ventilated building, they will say they are uncomfortable. And that's what the blue curve is saying. And therefore, we need to understand something called adaptive model. We say that we get affected by these three things: physiological, behavioral, and psychological. So, either the moment you are uncomfortable on the warmer side, you will start perspiring, or you will open up one or two buttons, or you will pull up your sleeves and stuff like that. That's the behavioral part. And psychological also, when you know that you are not going to get air conditioned air, you yourself psychologically will adapt to that space. And this is very, very important for at least Indians to understand. That moment you provide a closed office which doesn't have a window or the window doesn't open, the person will expect far cooler temperature inside than what they expect in the naturally ventilated spaces. So this is about the psychological part. So that's where I was saying satisfaction and comfort are primarily influenced by expectations. Context matters, so the thermal preferences vary. If you are in Radhakunj, if you are in pole houses, you know that pole houses is not going to give you a temperature like what you get in a central mall or any other air-conditioned theater. People play an active role in creating their own thermal preference, and outdoor weather, this is most important. The outdoor weather does influence you. We are like any other animal or any other flora and fauna. We also float with outdoors. And therefore, you cannot have, what does it mean? You cannot have one temperature across the year. The PMV model, which I showed you first, is suggesting that if you place person at 24 degree plus minus 1 across the world, any person, he will be comfortable. The assumption of that model is that all human beings are same, and their metabolic rate and their expectations and everything remains same, which adaptive model is questioning, and that's what we are working on. We say that no, a person coming from Spain will feel uncomfortable in Ahmedabad even if the temperature is at 24 degrees. So what needs to happen is that, let's say that this black line is showing you outdoor air temperature. The yellow, light yellow, is showing that 80% of the people would be comfortable in this range. And we're talking about naturally ventilated spaces in New Delhi. I'm just showing you one example. And 90% people, so this dark yellow and this light blue band is showing that 90% people will be comfortable. Now, what does it mean? It means that if I am comfortable at 21 degree in winter time, I will be uncomfortable towards cooler side in May and June when outdoor has gone up. Right? So I need to operate my air conditioner or my building in a manner that my indoor air temperature set point also needs to float with the outdoors, and then people will be comfortable. And this is sort of paradigm shift taking place right now in our thermal comfort models and designing of HVAC system or naturally ventilated space. Now, the person who has always remaining in an air-conditioned space will have a much lesser adaptability. The moment 2 degree shift and you say, I'm feeling uncomfortable. But this person who has remained in naturally ventilated spaces will be able to adapt quicker and in a wider range. And that's what Indians are, and that's what we are worried that if our next generation or generation after that, if they get exposed to the air-conditioned environment for extended period of time, their neutrality will change forever. Right now what happens is that people do have air conditioning in their offices, but they do not have air conditioning in their residences. And they do adapt the certain kind of comfort. But if you start having both sides and a shorter bands, so in a Western countries, this band, right now what we are saying is 20 to 25 is your band. In Western countries, this band is around 1.5 degree, 2 degree. Anything beyond that, people say they are uncomfortable. Right? So, point I'm trying to make here is that your, okay, last point before I conclude, is expectations in a mixed mode building. Now, there are two kind of buildings. One is completely naturally vented. You just simply have a ceiling fan, or second is air conditioned buildings. But there is a third category, which is predominantly taking place in India or places like tropical areas, which we call it a mixed mode, where you operate your building in a naturally ventilated building when outdoor is favorable. So I'll open my windows, I'll either switch on the fan, I may not switch on the fan. And when it becomes hotter outside, I'll close my windows and I'll start operating air conditioning. So that means my building is getting operated in 2 modes in one day. And there, even people's perception does change drastically. The moment I see my windows are closed, I will require 25 degrees. The moment you said, okay, it's a naturally ventilated, windows are open, I'm fine at 29 degrees with the ceiling fans. And this is what needs to be practiced and or needs to be preached more and more, that you probably need to operate your building more in a mixed mode operation. Whenever outdoor is harsh, rely on air conditioning. So basically you increase your productivity when you are comfortable. And whenever it's not, when it's favorable, you open windows and open it. So that's where some of these curves are important to understand what happens. That's it.
We were just wondering if we could have some of the graphs.
I'll share them. Okay. This one actually. You just go to www.carbse.org. Shall I write it down a little more? Yeah. And you will be able to generate that graph. There's some online tools where you put some numbers and it'll give you how you should design. So the graph which I showed you, that's for Delhi, but you can generate that kind of graph for Ahmedabad also. Some of the things are available on that or on that tool. And also if you see the CARB's other links, the presentation which I was showing, the part of that is also there. And you'll be able to access. Still, if you need something more, I can share that with you. Okay. Yes.
Yes, only I'm wondering what about the light conditions, because all the dark in the house is because of this things you have done, like because of the height, the one. But what happens if you make more? So why don't they put more light holes in the house, for example, more?
Yeah, I got your point. So, in fact, in a perception also, thermal comfort perception also suggests that when it is darker, it's cooler.
Yeah.
However, we do not have any scientific evidence to tell you how much cooler people feel when they're given. Every drop of 100 lux, what is a drop at the temperature people expect, kind of things. But it's true that when it's dark space, people feel that it's going to be cooler. In terms of comfort with the lux level, again, Indians are comfortable at 150 lux, and however our code suggests that 300 lux needs to be provided. But another research here done says that people are comfortable at 150 lux. However, Indians, at least this part of India, people get confused about their comfort level in the presence of daylight and artificial light together. So one of our research conducted the survey asking people, are you comfortable when they are not getting any artificial light? And they could respond. Same study, another group of people were completely in artificial light and they could respond. But when there was light coming from window or from courtyard, and you have artificial light also, and he said, "Are you comfortable?" "No, I'm not sure." So when you have two sources of light, people are not sure whether they're comfortable or not. That means they are.
That means that they are.
That means they are uncomfortable. This is what the sociologists suggest. I mean, when we got this data, we went to sociologists and they said, what does it mean? They said that when they are not saying you something, that means they are uncomfortable.
Do you think it's possible to find a way to give them like natural light, but not losing the cooler of the environments?
But technologically, these things are possible. That you do get a glass which does not allow infrared to get in, but allow the visible rays to get in, kind of thing. But reasonably expensive.
Maybe in the room you can make some holes to.
Yeah. So I mean, the best and one of the most effective. Even scientifically, that proves that it is very effective is these slums which use the PET bottles with the water inside. The water is a very low conductive stuff, and whatever sunlight gets in does get filtered out with the mass of the water. But in a concrete roof or in the old houses, those solar tubes kind of systems where you have a fully reflected tube inside, they do get light, but they also get a heat, and that's how. Thank you. So if they have a chance, or I can show you, I can send you that material sample, which is work. Just to cool Thank you.